Before the end of the legislative session, state leaders approved a measure reducing the state's top personal income tax. The decrease would not take place until 2015, and the taxes could be further reduced the following year, provided there's not a revenue dip. In addition, the same measure provides millions of dollars for capital repairs. But the bill is now being challenged. And here with more on why the legislation is facing opposition, Capitol reporter Michael McNutt. Good to see you again.
Yeah, Dave.
I think it's been since the end of the session since we've actually talked here.
I think you're right.
All right, so this measure, what's the reasoning behind the challenge?
Well, the Oklahoma City Attorney Jerry Fent, who has kind of made it a hobby of his to look at legislation that's passed to see if it follows the state constitution. He looked at this bill, House Bill 2032, and basically said there's several things wrong with the bill, but primarily he claims it violates the Constitution's one subject rule. The Constitution requires that each bill just have one subject. And of course the reason for that is that you don't try to coerce other members into voting for something they don't want, but you throw in something they might support. And he claims that there's two issues in this bill, two different subjects. One is the income tax reduction that will reduce the top personal income tax from 5.25% to 5%, as you mentioned, in 2015 tax year. And then the other provision provides $60 million a year for the next 2 fiscal years to repair and restore the state capitol. And he said that's basically slam dunk, that's two separate subjects, no way to get around it. Well, Tuesday, the state Supreme Court referee held a hearing on the matter. Jerry Fent presented his position, and then the state attorney general's office represented the state legislature and the governor. And Dan Whiteman was the assistant attorney general presenting that case, and he basically said, look, it's one subject. It all has to do with income tax, collection and management, how the income tax rate will be, and then how that money will be appropriated. And one of the things that he said this measure does is sets up a special fund now, a new fund for the capital repairs, and this money goes in there, so it's one subject. And the referee will heard the arguments, took about 30 minutes. Jerry Fent had some other contentions with the bill, mainly that it's a revenue bill because it does affect the revenue of the state. And if you remember House Bill, State Question 640, which voters passed in 1992, it requires a 3/4 majority in both the House, State House, and State Senate for it to pass any type of revenue increase. And Assistant Attorney General Whiteman said, now wait a minute, people when they went to the polls and voted State Question 640, they didn't want tax increases. They wanted to make it more difficult. He finds it hard to believe that the intent was to make tax reductions more difficult. So he said he doesn't think it's a revenue bill.
All right, so burning question, what happens next now?
Well, the Supreme Court referee heard the information, he'll write a report, and then he'll submit it to the Supreme Court. And then the justice.
That is the role of a referee, after all.
Yeah. Right. He's a hearing officer.
He's not making decisions. He's gathering information.
He just gathers information, and then he'll write a report, submit it to the, which we'll never see. It's a confidential report to the Supreme Court justices, and the justices will decide whether they'll take up the case. And that's the big thing, whether they'll take up the case, and they could just issue a ruling, which is generally what they've done in the past, or they could have some oral arguments if they think that if they have any questions. How long this will take is anyone's guess. The bill took effect July 1st. No money is being collected. The money is being portioned off, but no work on the Capitol has started yet because all the mechanics of forming this board that will oversee the repairs and restoration of the Capitol, none of those members have been appointed. So and the income tax reduction won't take effect until 2015. So they have there's certainly an immediacy because the bill took effect, but nothing is going to happen in the next few weeks. So we think probably within a month or two, we'll probably hear something from the High Court.
You've covered the Capitol for many years, and I'll get you out of here on this question. There's smart people out at the Capitol. If it's in our Constitution that you can't have two separate things in a bill, does this happen often? Do we see something like this very often?
Well, it does happen more often than not. And what's happened, we're seeing it more now because challenges have been filed. And just recently, we had a state Supreme Court threw out a tort reform bill, which determines the rules for civil liability suits, how you can file civil liability suits, and the procedure for that. That legislation was passed in 2009. It was a major piece of legislation. And it was thrown out. It was a very comprehensive bill, very long, 200 and some odd page bill, lots of different sections. And basically, the bottom line was it violated the single subject rule, which they call log rolling. And we've seen that now about 3 or 4 cases in the past 2 or 3 years. and it's something that probably, the defenders of it say, well, we try to get the similar subject. If we had to write a single bill for each subject, we spend so many bills, it would just bog down the process. But defenders of the Constitution will say, well, look, the Constitution, the framers, the founders, wanted to make it very clear so that legislators know what they're voting on, and then the voters, the taxpayers, know clearly what that legislation does.
Interesting stuff. Michael McNutt, good to see you. Hope your Cardinals are doing well.
Doing well so far.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the information. That was a good job of breaking down a complex subject. All right. More information can be found in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com.